Welcome to this session of the AI and Data Exchange. My guest today is Ryan McAleer, the Vice President of Software for Federal at IBM. Ryan, always a pleasure to catch up. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, Jason, my pleasure. Thanks so much for the opportunity to join you again.
AI data, they're two sides of the same coin, or they build on each other. They're so important, and I think what we've seen over the last several years is this really push to improve AI, to improve data, to really focus on getting gains, improve productivity. And now I'll use the word, Ryan. I'll get ahead of you. Efficiency. That's the new buzzword of the year. So let's just jump right in. How are agencies? How can they really use AI automation to really improve how they deliver services to citizens and customers?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I think you hit on it, Jason, right? Efficiency. I think the federal government has really been doing some form of this for maybe more than a decade, right? So it's not brand new, but I think they've been after it in terms of things like reducing administrative burdens and improving the delivery of their services and optimizing those resources. And I think while they've made tremendous strides in that direction, I think the new administration, I think, really offers a unique opportunity for agencies to rethink and reassess how they're spending money on these type of technologies. And IBM really feels like there's a few key challenges that AI can really quickly address and make a measurable impact on, right? So, for starters, the speed and accuracy in decision making, I think you'll see that really ramp up. Modernizing IT systems, that's been one that's been a challenge for many years, and I think that will accelerate with some of the new capabilities. Combating cyber threats, kind of that perfect use case for machine generated AI based tooling, and then reducing fraud, waste, and abuse. So maybe a couple of examples, right? Something like AI-enabled data processing tools and document management tools that can help sort and scan and classify documents, along with natural process or natural language process capabilities that can really help understand the contents of documents and allow for better classification, organization, and quicker access. And maybe the last one I'll share is just around like AI chatbots, AI powered chatbots. Been around maybe a year or two. You're going to start to see those scale. They can handle things like routine inquiries, provide real-time information, and kind of guide both a citizen and an employee through those more mundane processes to expedite, reduce, error, and just deliver a better outcome. And we've seen this at IBM, right? You may have heard through the media and other outlets just how much we've inserted these AI powered chat bots and some of these efficient AI automation tools into our own enterprise, and we're recognizing multi-million dollars of savings directly contributing to IBM's bottom line, which you're seeing it reflected directly in our stock price over the last month and at all-time highs. So these are real outcomes that the government agencies can expect for sure.
You said, listen, this is not brand new. Agencies have been doing reducing burden. You and I remember the big push for robotics process automation. I think that was the kind of that low hanging fruit. And I think that's gotten agencies very comfortable with, okay, look, I can kind of take and address this low value work with automation. Is that why there's this move now to, okay, what else can we do with it? How can we speed up decision making? How can we modernize IT? Is that what you're starting to see? There's a lot more people more comfortable with how automation and AI can impact their mission areas?
Well, I certainly think that RPA, the robotic process automation, was a great on-ramp to a lot of what the government was ultimately chasing, right, in terms of efficiencies and be able to automate. Obviously, some of the challenges with that were brittleness and kind of the rigidity of having to deploy and script those bots and manage those bots. And I think with what you're seeing around generative AI now in this space, particularly like around more effective decision making, they're not so brittle. They can, with generative AI, the government can really work smarter by automating a lot of these mundane processes in a much more flexible and dynamic way, instead of how brittle some of those early kind of process automation, or even, dipping the toe in the waters around AI-based automation. A good example that we talk about within some of our client space is around like the claims benefit process. There's a lot of government agencies that have a process like that. One of the big ones that we work with has more than 1,000 documents in that process for doing claims and benefit processing. So you can imagine like how error prone that is. And even with something like RPA, the complexity of having to manage all those documents and the scripting and the rigidity there makes it really, really difficult. So with the IBM sort of generative AI approach, we've been able to really reduce those inconsistencies. We've been able to eliminate those errors, help expedite that decision making at the time in which it's going through that process, and deliver a much, much better outcome for both the citizen and the employee. Another place that we're seeing tremendous value with respect to AI and like ultimately that decision making ability is around technology business management. And so this emerging space that's solely focused on kind of cost optimization of your IT landscape. So whether it's kind of the on-prem or it's in the cloud, you might have heard that as referred to as FinOps. That's all underneath this technology business management umbrella so that you can get full visibility into what you're spending, tie it back to those budget line items, understand where that mismatch might occur, where there's real ROI, and where there's opportunity for efficiencies. And we see that as a tremendous opportunity for the government to, again, back to use your word, create more efficiencies. So a couple of good examples, I think, in that domain.
I appreciate the examples. I think that really does resonate well as folks here. Okay, great. You're saying use these things to automate, but how? I just want to go back on two things, and I want to go forward and talk more about Gen AI. You talk about brittle. RPA was maybe a little bit more brittle, but as we look at AI now, it's a lot more dynamic. The brittleness was you told it to do X, it did X. You told it, but if you needed it X plus one, it couldn't do the plus one. That's maybe I'm dumbing it down, but that's that brittleness, right? It can only do what you told it to do, while AI and Gen AI maybe think is not the right word, but they have a little more ways to offer feedback to say, hey, well, if not this, then that. Am I capturing that correctly?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to categorize it, right? They just have a more fluid nature. They're more dynamic. They can respond in more real time to inquiries, to forms, to understanding at scale versus, yes, the way in which you had to deploy an RPA bot, right, based on a particular interface, a particular screen, a particular backend, and when that screen changed or that backend service changed, the bot could break down, right, and interrupt that process. So yeah, absolutely. And I think there's just so much more application for these generative AI solutions. I think chat bots was one that I talked about earlier. I think a lot of times when we think about RPA, we're thinking about bots. We're thinking, there's this easy way to align chatbots and RPA bots because of the similar nature there. But AI, particularly generative AI, is so much more than chatbots, right? I talked a little bit about how IBM's using those internally to gain efficiencies, but even things like modernizing your IT stack, right? To do things like software updates, patch management, security fixes, improving the efficiencies of code generation, things like COBOL to Java, right? Really bridging the gap between some of those older technologies and newer technologies, improving the data interoperability, reducing the time that humans are spending on those system updates. Like those are all fantastic use cases and ways that we're seeing the government take advantage of this new wave of AI that, with RPA, for example, they could just never have really delivered on. So, so we think kind of, again, in this modernization story, that the right application migration strategy can ensure that the right applications are chosen and are not only compatible with their modern technology, but also adaptable to fit into their legacy systems. And I think that's kind of, again, a unique differentiator of kind of this new AI paradigm.
The comment you made about COBOL to Java, or bridging the gap of, between kind of like old code and new code. That's a fascinating use case, because I think one of the biggest challenges we're seeing with IT modernization is, okay, how do I have the right money, or do I have a pot of money to spend on upgrading this old system? And I know the Office of Personnel Management got a technology modernization fund award recently to do just this for their retirement systems modernization. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, how much discussion are you having with agencies and CIOs and those folks about taking old legacy systems and modernizing their underlying code, but without having to rewrite all the code, but using AI to drive that process? Is that a gaining popularity? Is that something that more and more folks are interested in talking about doing?
I mean, the conversations are certainly plentiful. Um, it really is kind of finding the right balance. So when we talk about, the modernization journey, the IT modernization landscape, a lot of times we're starting with the Z platform, but not always. And the Z platform, while a lot of people might consider legacy, is one of the most innovative platforms out there, and we've continued to innovate on that platform. So it's really about striking the right balance between what are those workloads that are maybe the most important to the enterprise, the most need for security, the most need for performance and uptime, and what are those workloads that maybe are still running on the Z platform that don't fit that criteria and can be migrated or can be upgraded to something different. And that balance is something that we engage in conversation with all the time, and we do have tools, like I mentioned, to help in that journey. I think one of the challenges, or one of the biggest challenges that our clients face, isn't so much in the technical space in that process as it is in just finding the skills, right? So, those skills are at a premium, and that is a way in which you're starting to see, particularly generative AI really play a role, because with some of these automated tooling, some of the ways in which AI can generatively automatically help convert COBOL to something like Java or a more modern language, you don't need as much depth in skill with some of the traditional skills around COBOL or what have you. So it allows for that scale and allows for less depth in that technical skill with these more modern AI based solutions. And that's the conversation that we're having a lot as well.
I think you hit the nail on the head. The finding someone who can make that connection from COBOL to Java. There are not a lot of folks around like that, and they cost a lot of money. And if you can get the AI or the technology, underlying technology, to do it for you, that's going to save you time, money, and effort. And I know from the OPM examples, is just to kind of go back to that, is it's not a, okay, the the AI did it. We're done. There's people checking it. There's always the human in the loop. So I don't want folks to think when it comes to retirement systems, it's, trust and not verify. There's plenty of verification going on. I also think it's interesting as you talk about FinOps or IT, kind of optimization. Walk me through more details about how AI can help with that. We've seen a big move over the years about technology business management, the cost towers, understanding where your money's at. I think agencies have made a fair amount of progress. How can the use of these chatbots, automations, AI tools get agencies even further down that path?
Yeah, well, this is one that I'm personally excited about. I've spent a lot of time in this space, and again, technology business management is kind of this whole umbrella of IT spend optimization, getting clarity on where the money is going, and is it delivering value, right? So through some of that analysis, you might understand, what? I'm spending money on 8 separate databases across 8 separate database vendors. I might be able to recognize some cost savings by just consolidating onto a single database platform, getting the volume discounts from that vendor, and scaling that out. So that's just sort of one example. In the cloud space, right? The cloud space, because it's so dynamic, because it's so easy to scale up and scale down, the economics are different in that paradigm. And so the practice underneath technology business management specific to the cloud is what's been coined as FinOps, right? The bringing together of that financial fiscal responsibility with the operational efficiencies and flexibility that the cloud can bring. And so in this space, one of the most effective or most beneficial things that we've seen from our government clients is being able to in real time understand what applications are being called, what's the resource demand for those applications, and really kind of creating a resource pool that can serve up those resources in real time instead of having a static resource pool dedicated to each application. And so what that does is it allows you to optimize all those resources, the compute, the storage, the memory, and reduce the cost that you're spending on those resources while actually providing a more performant application. So you're driving down the cost in real time, automating those actions, and then providing a better outcome to the user of those applications in terms of that application performance. So it's a win-win and a really fantastic way in which we're applying AI to that whole entire space.
And another key benefit that I think folks sometimes overlook is like there was data center sprawl, like there was shadow IT. There's also now cloud sprawl. I've heard several CIOs over the past few years say they've got to get a better handle on all this cloud spend. I mean, you see this with the Army as an example, with their C Army platform. They're trying to kind of centralize some of that management of that cloud. Okay, who has access? When do they have access? And probably some of these automation tools through the FinOps and others can say, hey, did you know you have 12 contracts with the same cloud provider that are all different cost structures, but you're doing the same thing with them? I mean, that's really a key driver of that optimization piece that I think CIOs and others are really starting to get their head around. What's those conversations like? I mean, is where would you say in the old crawl, walk, run stage of FinOps? I feel like we're still in the crawl, but are you seeing people start to walk a little bit?
We are starting to see people walk a little bit. It's one of these technologies that I think it almost sounds too good to be true, right? So like there's a little bit of skepticism that's like, wait a minute, really, we're just going to kind of plug this tool in and it's going to tell us where to save money. Like, come on, right? And so what we do, we say, look, don't let us kind of sit here and talk to you about this. Let us just show you. So we've got a really sort of, I think, mature way of being able to sit down with the client, uh, put this technology into their environment in a really, safe, secure way, and let it run. Let it show. Let the AI, right, really show what's possible if you were to run this technology. It comes back with a set of actions that a user can look at and say, wow, that actually does make sense. Oh, I see where it's going. I see how it got to that decision. Oh, and it hasn't actually implemented or executed anything, right? So it gives that confidence and that comfort level to really dive into where it's coming from those recommendations or those proposed actions before any automated action takes place. And that's what's made you know, this process or this adoption well into the walk phase. And in fact, we've got some clients that are now running and saving multiple millions of dollars a year while improving that performance, that outcome that I talked about before. So it really, some of these technologies take longer to implement and see real value from, right? Can take 6, 9 months. FinOps and this whole TBM space, you can start to recognize savings in a month, right? From the time you implement to the time you're actually seeing the bottom line savings. So it can be incredibly quick, and the ROI often does seem too good to be true. And I assure you it's not.
And the reason for that is very basic. All of a sudden, you have clarity and kind of line of sight over, oh, here's all the contracts or all the cloud instances. I can make decisions today that really drives back to the bottom line tomorrow. Versus with some tools, as you said, well, let's collect all the data, let's analyze all the data. Now let's talk about it, right? It's kind of that old like it takes time to make a decision. This you can see now. Hey, why do I have five of the separate contracts with company XYZ? Maybe I just need one that can do it all. So I think your point is really strong and important to highlight that folks can see immediate results from FinOps, and
Absolutely.
I expect more and more to kind of look at that. All of this, Ryan, that we've been talking about today really is leading to one basic concept, is just driving decisions faster. You said at the top of our area, there's four areas of measurable impact. Your first one was speed to decision making. That's where I kind of want to take our last 5 minutes here together. Talk a little bit about why the AI tools and automation, that's really the end result, the key here to drive better decisions. We know why, if you will, but how's that happening? What are some of the things that are still challenges? Uh, how to improve this process?
Well, I think I talked about some of those already, right? I mean, it really just boils down to the experience that, employees are having, that citizens are having. How do you do more with less, right? That's a big part of, the challenges that our clients are faced with, how to deliver that efficiency. And so as you think about processes that they're going through, we talked about the skill shortage. So you have humans maybe with less depth in terms of their skill, whether it's the legacy modernization, or it's the claims processing stuff that I talked about earlier. So how can you leverage AI to assist those humans, right? To make them more efficient, to provide them with a better experience. And so AI in the form of, chat bots, in the form of, automated document processing, in the form of modernizing IT, is creating a moment of impact at that process, from code generation to forms processing, the moment of impact in that process, make that human more skilled, more efficient, with more data to be able to then help make that decision. And AI can assist in that. AI is bringing that data forward in the form of forms and document claims or processing, code generation, or even FinOps, like we talked about, exposing what's being spent in the cloud and giving that information, to the person at the moment of impact when they can help make that decision. So it goes a long way to make that decision faster, more accurate, and and with less time to take to get there. So I think those couple of reasons are probably at the top of the heap.
You bring up data. This is the AI and data exchange. We've talked a lot about AI. Let me just take a half a step back. One of the things that I've heard about data is we've been spending more than a decade, 15, 20 years, really focused on the data. But what Gen AI and other tools are doing is making that data still really important, because garbage in, garbage out, we know that. At the same time, where we once said, okay, well, we could get our arms around structured data, but unstructured data is more difficult. AI is making it so it can really absorb all your data, even unstructured data, in a much better way, in a much different way, to drive some of that decision making. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing with data and how I don't know, say approach or the view of data maybe has changed in terms of, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect anymore. It just has to be good enough.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would submit on the data front is, IBM's point of view in this space is all around the data platform. And so, there's a lot of elements to a data platform, whether it's the integration paradigm, the storage, the security, right? You have to have thought through all of those elements. And I think IBM, provides a lot of thought leadership in that space. But I think, the point that you're hitting on, around maybe not being perfect, I'd still say data is at the heart of any AI strategy, right? You're not going to have a really robust AI without a really robust IA, right? The information sort of architecture. And so I do think that's really important. What we found in particularly like the large language model space is that with sort of industry specific models, with enterprise grade models that are kind of purpose built for the enterprise, you can do a lot more with less. And so, our point of view in that space is really around open AI, around open models with things like Granite, where we can deliver the same or better performance at a fraction of the cost, both from a compute and runtime perspective, as well as that training, cost, because they're smaller, more purpose built, and going to be much more performant. So I think that's another really important part of anybody's data strategy as it pertains to generative AI and LLMs, that they really consider the use of which model for what use case, and the openness to kind of drive that collaboration and that kind of community to be able to recognize real value.
Ryan, we got about a minute or so left together, and I just want to come back around. There's a lot have happened around AI and data in the last, 5 years, let alone the last 15, 20 years. Uh, if you look forward a little bit, what should agencies keep in mind as they continue down this path? this journey of applying AI to improve those areas you mentioned, efficiency, mission areas, better decision making, cyber, of course, and modernization. What are some of the main considerations that agencies need to keep in mind as they move forward?
Yeah, well, I think that I guess it's always hard to predict, too far into the future, right? But I think that 2025 specifically is going to be kind of the year that we start to really see scale in the AI development, really kind of unlocking more of its potential. Last year, particularly, in the federal space, we saw a ton of pilots of, really sort of exploring the depths of what's possible, whether it's a FinOps pilot, a modernization pilot, some of these processing type of pilots and document classification pilots. And so the agencies are really starting to see the potential. They're starting to see the potential within their own enterprise, within their own walls of their organization with their data. And so 2025 really, I think, is going to be the year that we see the scale, right? Unlocking some of the potential. We're going to see these pilots move into more full-blown production capacity, drive out across the organization. And we'll see AI continue to play that sort of really cross-functional role and providing humans with that faster decision making, more agile, flexible ways in which that they can get information, skill up, and deliver value to their organizations. And again, I think it's going to be centered on the openness, and the more open their models are, the more open the implementations are, that then the more innovative and the more kind of AI-driven outcomes that they will start to see. So I think that's 2025 is going to be a great year for AI.
Well, we will be there together watching it, and in your case, probably helping to push it forward. But unfortunately, we are out of time for this session of the AI and Data Exchange. So let me thank my guest. Ryan McAleer is the Vice President of Software for Federal at IBM. Ryan, always a pleasure to catch up. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Jason. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
I'm Jason Miller, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more from the AI and Data Exchange.